Well, it's been a very devastating summer heading into the fall for us here in our country, and all of these different hurricanes that hit. You know, we think of, first of all, we think of Puerto Rico, and we think of the Virgin Islands. My good friend Jeff, who lives in Texas, who was affected by the hurricanes, he lives in Corpus Christi, Texas, and he was 10 miles from utter devastation. He did have some damage, but it was 10 miles from him. Everything was just literally devastated. But on top of it all, my friend Jeff, his wife that he married years ago, is from Puerto Rico. And of course, a hurricane hit Puerto Rico, and they couldn't get a hold of her father and her family there in Puerto Rico. So that was a very stressful and just difficult time. And of course, then we have the hurricanes hitting Florida. My sister-in-law Janice is here today, and her and Bruce rode through the hurricane that hit there. And fortunately, they weathered it pretty well with just some roof damage and some door damage. But then finally, we look at the hurricanes. Also, Louisiana, I think, was another hurricane that hit, so there was flooding and damage there. And then finally, we think going back again to Texas, and just how devastating the damage was in Texas. And I think what has been amazing in all of this is how many of us have known somebody connected to one of these hurricanes in some kind of way. And since we are Americans and we do in fact love our country, we are sympathetic and we are empathetic to our brothers and sisters and those who are in need. And I think probably the one thing for us to remember is that while the media has moved on to other more tantalizing headlines for clicks, we recognize that this is continues to be a major focus, that there are Americans and people that are struggling. One thing as Christians we need to always do, as Christians we need to always be keeping our eyes open to what the needs are and where would God call us to be. Keep your eyes open as a Christian. What are the needs in front of me and where would God call me to be? Because our faith in Jesus Christ is not just about preserving our faith for ourselves. That's not what it's about. Our faith is about going out and using what God has given to us to bless other people. And one of the ways that we reach somebody's heart is through an act of compassion and through an act of kindness. That's the doorway to somebody's heart. And you think about keeping your eyes open. Al Tresco sent me a text, I think the day of the hurricane going on, and praying for Nancy, Elaine's sister. And after it all took place, Al and I were kind of just sharing together pastorally with each other. And Al said to me, he said, "Pastor, I think I need to go to Texas. I think I need to go and do something, and I just might," he said to me. And then, gee whiz, a week later, not too soon after that comment, he was putting his team together. So listen, we'd like you to meet the A-team this morning and hear their testimony, that you might be inspired to do your own work in the needy world that we live in. And so at this time, I'd like to invite Rich Rice and Doug Krusper and Dennis Fultz. If you would come up, and there's 3 comfortable chairs for you since you are our guest today, but you're only guest one day. Actually, at least 2 of you guys help us with the Christmas tree every year. Who's our Christmas tree helpers? These are our Christmas tree. They all help. They've all been here. You know, so you're not even really a visitor here to Plum Creek Church. You're part of our church family, and I see you guys around all the time, and you've helped with things at the manse. So, and I'd like to invite Al to come up at this time. And Al, may the Lord just bless the 4 of you as you share your testimony. It's not like you do this every day, but God just be with you and just relax. You're amongst friends here and people who love you and care about you.
Thank you, Pastor Allen. He invited me here to talk about Houston, and he said, "I'm going to have you do this instead of my sermon." He says about 10 or 15 minutes. Well, I've sat through many of his sermons. They're always longer than 15 or 20 minutes.
I think it's a day of reckoning. You know what I mean? If I take that, you should be able to. And I don't think is anybody here worried about time? Even the time watchers will not complain today.
Amen. Okay, well, we live pretty complacent lives where we're at. We're in a region where we don't get the We don't get the wildfires. We don't get the tornadoes that they do in the west. We don't get the earthquakes. We don't get the snow that they get in the north. So we're pretty complacent with where we live and how our lives are. And we see it on the news, but it really doesn't affect us. Well, this hurricane, as you saw from the pictures, it affected Houston and it affected Elaine's sister. I called Nancy and talked to her and said, what's going on? And she goes, I don't know. She left her house, left her car, left everything she owned, took a box, some food for her dogs, and left. Had no idea what she was going to come back to. So she was at a friend's apartment on the 4th floor for several weeks. And I kept texting her and no answer, no answer. And she said, it looks like my street got damaged pretty bad. So I says, can you send us pictures? And she sent a few pictures of her house. There's a picture you'll see on here. It's up to the mailbox in her front of her house. So we knew she got a lot of damage, and she said, I think I'm a little bit better than my neighbors are. She said, but I don't know yet. So it was about a week and a half before she got in there, and I said, if your house is repairable, I want to be your contractor. I want to come down and at least give you a livable house again. And I talked to Elaine, and I said, I'm going to have to take off work. I'm going to have to take 3 or 4 weeks and go down and try to get her a livable house. And Elaine says, can we afford that? And I says, you know what? I can't afford not to go. I says, I need to do this. So I didn't have a plan, but I knew we needed to get money. So I called my daughter Noelle and her husband Rob, and I said, I need a website. You guys are the computer guys, you need to help me out. We got a web page for Nancy, and the money started coming in. So God's plan was working. And I've said many times, the best gift you can give somebody is your time. You know, whether it's the elderly, a child, or anybody, sometimes the best gift you can give is your time. So I said, that's my calling. God said you need to go. So my nephew heard about it, and he goes, I'm in, Uncle Well. I says, that's, you know, I don't know, that's going to be a hardship on you. And he goes, I don't care, I'm going. My best friend Doug heard that Rich and I were going, and he goes, I'm in too. So then the plan started happening. So as we talked to friends and family and businesses, our church, we started getting donations, we started getting money coming in, and the plan was in place now. I didn't know how we were going to pull it off, but at least we had something working in our favor. So Rich was lucky enough to get us a construction trailer. We got a construction trailer, and we gathered all the material. Elaine did all the ordering for me. She ordered all the doors. We took down 80 sheets of drywall. We probably took down 12,000 pounds of building material to repair this house. And I had no idea what I was ordering. If you look at the pictures, I just had pictures of a half-devastated house, cut 4 feet up the whole way around, everything removed. The electrical was hanging. The only 2 working things in her house was 2 toilets. That was it. There was no other running water. There was no other source of anything. So the guys, I was visiting my sister in Philadelphia, and I was telling her that we needed to do this, and I said, I need one more person. And Elaine was talking to her girlfriend Laura, and she goes, you know what, Dennis is retired from plumb contracting. The light bulb went off again. So I called up Dennis, and Dennis says, I'd love to go. And Dennis has worked with me in the past, and he goes, I'm in. So we had our 4 guys. And my sister said, you got the A-team, Al. You got the A-team going to Texas. There the shirt says, the A-team here to work. So the travel to Texas was tough. Well, we had the construction trailer. 2 days before, we realized we had more material than the construction trailer could hold. So we needed to get a U-Haul. Doug says, I'm a good businessman. Let me do the phone calls. They said, $2,000 for a U-Haul. Well, Doug, he talked to him and talked him down, saved us $500 on a U-Haul by being a savvy businessman and tell him it was for charity. So we were on our way to Texas. We left on a Saturday, It's almost 1,500 miles. That's a long drive. We drove all the way to Arkansas the first night. That's a long drive when you're hauling a U-Haul and pulling a large trailer. But these guys were diligent, and they were steadfast in their determination to get there. We got there Sunday night, and we pulled into her plant. It was dark, and you could smell the stale water, the musty, moldy smell that if you ever had water in any place of your house, it was worse than that. The garbage was piled up everywhere, and we didn't have any idea what we were in for here. And we pulled onto Nancy Street, and Nancy was standing out on a curb, and none of us thought about videotaping it, but she come out screaming and yelling and crying and said, her guardian angels are here. We got out of the truck, we looked at her house, and the guys walked through her house and shook their head and said, you want to do this in 2 weeks, El? That's our plan. I said, you know, the Lord will guide us and he'll give us the strength we need to get this done. But as we talked to the neighbors, everybody had a story. There was a guy who rented a truck to take his furniture out. And when he went back to his home to take his furniture, he heard of a guy that was trapped with a wheelchair and he couldn't go anywhere. He took his truck, drove to that man's place. They put his wheelchair on the lift. They raised him up and he took him to safety. Didn't care about his furniture. So we heard different stories. There were 82 people died in that flood. 4 of them in Nancy's neighborhood. It was a woman who died, 2 small children, and a young boy went back to rescue his dog on a boat. And when he pushed his boat off at the stop sign, he was electrocuted and killed in the boat with his best friend beside him, 1 block from Nancy's house. So that's what that whole community was dealing with. But in talking, we talked to some of the neighbors, and they were steadfast in the fact that they wanted to rebuild. But Nancy didn't know how. She didn't have a plan. We went out to eat one night, and we asked her, Nancy, what would you have done had this crew not come down here to help you? And she says, I don't know. She had no backup plan. All her friends and her support group was in the same situation she was. So they weren't there to help her because they had their own issues and their own problems. So we strapped on our boots, and the first night we made a plan. We unloaded the truck, and the next day we started. And it was a monumental task just getting it started. I remember the words from John Haydeen. He says, Al, any electrical that's touched any water, you guys need to change it. And his company provided us with all the electrical supplies we needed. Laura Wolf donated some electrical stuff for Nancy's bathroom. So we had this outpouring of generosity. And we didn't have enough money to cover all the materials, and Elaine says, I don't care. She gave me her charge card and says, buy whatever you need to buy, get my sister her house back. So that was our plan. It wasn't much of a plan, but we had one. And these guys were willing and they were ready to work. We worked long days. We slept on cots in different rooms in the house because we were working in every room. We didn't want to sleep in a motel and pay for rooms when we didn't have to. And we showered at a neighbor's house who happened to have running water. So we were lucky in that regard. And we had so much food donated to us. We ate out of crock pots. We sat on a hard table and chairs. But that was our comfort of home for 2 weeks. And we managed to drink a couple beers at night, too, and talk about it. So the A-team, you had to get the A-team. You had to keep them happy. But you know what? God worked through us in that project. It was 3 times we went out. My biggest fear was I didn't want to burn these guys out. When you look at how much work there is and how little time you have to do it, halfway through it, my nephew came over to me and says, I don't think we're going to get this project done. And I says, well, let's just see what we can do. That night, I told Nancy, get us out of here. We need to go to a bar. She found a sports bar so we could watch the hockey game. So we watched the hockey game. We had some drinks. We sat around and we talked. And the next day, it was like these guys were revitalized. They were back focused. And it was so hard because there were times when we didn't think we'd get anything done, and then there were times it would just come together. There was so much to do. We took down 4 exterior doors, 10 interior doors, completed two bathrooms, and redid her kitchen. She cried early on and says, they want to rip out my granite countertops, Al. I don't want them to do that. I said, that's okay. I do kitchens. I'll prop them up, tell them to do what they need to do, because they had to get, the biggest thing in Houston was mold. When the mold, even if the water is 18 inches, it starts growing up the walls, and it slowly penetrates and takes over everything, and that's horrible, devastating. So there was a group from Arkansas that came in, and there was 4 of them. It was a pastor, his son, and 2 other kids, and they gutted the entire place. So when you looked at the streets, people's furniture was out there, all their belongings, the stuff that they saved and cherished for years. All of a sudden, it's out on the curb, and the machine comes by and just scoops it up and hauls it away. And then you realize the important things in life, and it's not always the material things. But Nancy managed to save some pictures and a little bit of clothing, and if you'll see in one picture, you'll see her wedding gown hanging off the gutter in front of her garage, because that's how much water she had in her house. But, you know, I can't give enough credit to these guys, because they wouldn't quit. They kept working through it. There was times we skipped lunch. We worked straight through it. We'd eat peanut butter crackers, Gatorade, and keep working. And there was times they didn't want to stop and eat. We wouldn't eat till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. That's how driven they were to get this project done for Nancy. And I think the excitement in Nancy shone through to these guys. And we said that it changed a lot of us. And I'd like to turn the mic over and let any of them talk and say what this meant to them, how it meant for Nancy, how it changed their lives, or how it made them feel about this whole mission project that we did. I'll give it to my nephew Rich first.
Hey, I'm not a public speaker by any means, but this whole thing changed a lot in my life. The project, when Al first, I was over his house one night, and I don't know what I was there for, but he told me he was going down. He said he was gonna go down for 3-4 weeks. And I just looked at him, I said, okay. I said, I'm coming. I said, I can't give you 3-4 weeks. I said, I'll give you 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever I can do. And he said, do you want to talk to Jen first? And I said, no, Jen's my wife. And I said, no, I said, I'm in. So that night I went home, put the kids to bed, and I looked at her and I said, Al's going to Houston. He's going to help Nancy out and rebuild her house. And I told him I'm going with him. And didn't know what kind of reaction I was going to get, but she came over, gave me a big hug, and she said, you got to do what you got to do. She said, it's family. Family comes first. And that meant the world to me. And my family helped out a ton throughout the whole thing. I got 2 little kids. They're extremely busy. They're involved in almost anything that you could be involved in. And, you know, so trying to continue their life and everything, you know, everybody stepped in and did their part and helped out a ton. And the kids blew me away because they went up to Mommy at one time and said, you know, we know Daddy's away and we can't do everything that we have to, and it's okay. If I don't make my game, if I don't make my practice, it's okay. And coming from a 7 and a 9-year-old, to me, that just blows me away. I'm truly impressed with my kids and my wife and my uncle. He came up to me at one point and gave me a big hug, and he said, I can't believe we got this done. And I looked at him and I said, everything that you see that I've done here came from that man right there. He's the one that taught me everything. So this was the summer job that I had that I've never left. And yeah, between him and my family and my aunt for giving me the heart to, you know, my aunt is just an amazing woman. A lot of you know her, and her heart is big as gold, and she would do anything for anybody, and that is rubbed off on me. So I thank a lot of you guys for giving me the opportunity to go do this. So.
Thanks, Rich. Dennis was the last one that joined the A-team, but he was our ace in the hole. I nicknamed him MacGyver going in, because he fixed everything. He fixed all the wiring. He fixed Nancy's air conditioning that was up in the attic. He come down, he looked like Sambo. He was all black and covered, and he never complained, but he got her air conditioning working. He took the fans apart and made them work. He just did all the little things. The tedious task. He ran the gas lines and did the electrical and did the stuff that needed to be done, but it didn't take it away from Rich and myself and Doug. We were able to do other tasks. So MacGyver's next up. I'm going to let you talk to him.
Took a long time to get that nickname, but just briefly, I'd like to bring up the word challenge, and that's exactly what this is. You go through life, you have challenges, raising a family, whether you beat your buddy at a golf game, it all has to do with challenges. And by far, this is probably one of the biggest challenges I've had in my life. I got the call from Al, and I said, I'm in. And thank the big guy up above. He helped us out. He helped us get it done. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Next is my best friend, Doug Krusper. We've known each other since we were little kids. If I need something any time of the day or night, I can make that phone call, and Doug's there. And when he found out we were going, he said, I'm in. He has a tree service business here in our community, and he said, I'll keep my guys working. It won't be a hardship for me, Al. I need you. I'll be there as long as you need me. Whatever you need, I'm in. So, Doug, I want to thank you.
You know, I'm always there for you. The reason I went down was because Al needed my help. I did it out of love for Al and Elaine and Nancy and the family. But the one thing that I do want to do here is thank my wife, because without her support, this would have never happened. So I love you and thank you.
I think that was our biggest asset. You know, we had faith in the Lord, and we had the support at home. Elaine took care of things for me. I was gone for 2 weeks. I've gone on hunts all over the world and never been away from her that long. But this was hard on her, and my son stepped up. He did all my yard work. He took care of the things around the house that I usually do. So, and there were people that come in and watched our pets when we weren't there. So all these things fell into place as we were off doing a mission that we didn't know how it was going to turn out. But if you see the look and the joy on Nancy's face, she'd come home every day. It's the first time I've ever seen anybody hug a refrigerator. She said, this is the first time I've been married 30 years. I've lived here for 30 years. I've never owned a new refrigerator. So she finally got her wish and got her new refrigerator. So just seeing the joy and the excitement every day, she would come home and she would see something else done, and she would, just the drywall, she would jump up and down and say, I had a house again. Well, we made her house better when we left than it was. We put smoke detectors in for her. We put new fixtures in for her. We repaired things that needed repaired. We put rods in her laundry room that she never thought about having before. And she goes, they're so nice to have the things that she never thought about before. So sometimes the little things in life do mean a lot. I would like to read a text from her this morning. It says, thank you, A-Team. The gift of your time, energy, expertise, and love has been the most beautiful experience in my life. Because of the team, my life and home have been transformed. All my love to you all. Wish I was there today, but I am there in spirit. Love, Nancy. And you know, Nancy appreciated everything we did, but one thing I can't do for you is thank you. I think that's up to Nancy to thank you. Look at that big smile. I mean, we made it, and you made it. It was all possible through work and through the Lord. He made us do this. I know it's only one person in a city of many, but you know, they're still faced with challenges down there. Elaine was done a week later, and FEMA was just starting to bring trailers in for people to live in while they were working on their homes. And Nancy's going to be the first ones in her neighborhood to be back after a devastating flood like this. We met her neighbor across the street. He's a builder, and he does all the work for Nancy. And I went into his house, and it was gutted just as bad as hers. So everybody was affected by this. And, you know, bad things do happen to good people. But through faith and through the Lord, a little bit of hard work and the diligence of a crew like this, we were able to pull this off for Elaine's sister, and I'm so proud to be a part of that. Thank you, Plum Creek.
Well, I want to give thanks and praise, Al, for your obedience to the Lord. At the beginning of the talk, I just mentioned how important it is for us Christians to kind of keep our eyes open and to pay attention to what the needs are around us and the ways that we can reach out and plant a seed. And the Lord definitely to reach out to those in physical need and the like. And so thank you for recognizing a need and being obedient to the Spirit, pricking your heart the way it did, because I think what is also beautiful is look at all the people that you pulled into your call. You know, the Lord put a call on your heart, and you pulled in really hundreds of people. First of all, with the A-Team, and with the A-Team's family, with your family, with this church family, with Facebook friends and family, with all the ways that we raised money on this and all the ways that people donated. So, I mean, it's really neat to see that just your willingness to be, sometimes it's scary to be obedient, and it's definitely not convenient to be obedient, but when we are obedient, isn't it just neat that all the ways that so many people were blessed, ultimately Nancy, but then so many other people. So thank you for your witness, your testimony of obedience to the Lord, the compassion in your heart, and just who you are. Thanks again to the A-Team. Thanks again to your family and the sacrifices you made. Thanks again to Plum Creek Church, being who Plum Creek Church is. And may God just bless us all. May we continue to keep our eyes open for the needs that are out there. Could we have a prayer?
I have one more note that I would like to say. I know the youth periodically will go down and do mission work, and they'll do repair of somebody's home for a weekend. And usually I'm too busy. I'm off hunting somewhere, fishing, or doing something with my friends. But I think I'm going to donate a little bit more time to the church. And I see what a need there is out there. And if I can make a difference in somebody's life, I'll be glad to give them a weekend and help out with the mission committee.
Amen. Would you stand, everybody, and pray with us as the singers gather at their lapels? Dear Lord, we give you thanks and we give you praise for the wonderful privilege we have to be your servants in this needy world. Lord, it's not our place to figure out and understand why all these things happen. It's our job to respond and to recognize that, like Al said, just giving of our time. Next week, we're going to be thinking about stewardship and time and talents and treasure and just the importance of how, with what we give, we can make a difference in the world. And I think as we head into that stewardship series next week, there's no greater example of the transformation that can happen when we give that time. And so we thank you, Lord, again for the A-Team. We lift up Nancy to you in Texas and all those in her community, all those throughout the state of Texas, those in Florida, those in Louisiana, those in the Virgin Islands, those, Lord, in Puerto Rico. We just lift up all these places that have been devastated by these hurricanes earlier this fall. And we just, Lord, help us to be sympathetic, help us to be empathetic, and help us to continue to keep our eyes open the ways that we need to be obedient. And may we recognize your presence, that if we are obedient, we don't have to have all the answers and all the resources. We just have to say, yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, Lord. If we say yes, you'll do the rest, because we had no idea how this project was going to get done in the short period of time. And we're just mesmerized by how you stood in the gap for Al and his friends, and they accomplished their mission for Nancy and for the glory of your name. Be with us, we pray, as we go out in this world to serve you in it. And everybody said, Amen.